Hello there. I thought I'd make this video today to edit some of the pictures that I took when I went out on a photo walk yesterday. I thought I would choose some of them and go through them on Lightroom and show you how I edit them. So if I go out and take pictures, I always come back, I import them into Lightroom, and I always edit them. No matter how good I am at editing, I still think it's good to do. I'm probably better at editing them now than when I started doing this. And also I'm editing them to make them look the way I want to look, which may not be the way that you want them to look. So even if you don't like the way I'm editing them, know that you can change them to maybe make them look how you want to edit them. So you might want to make them look softer or a bit more saturated or more contrasty or things like that. I'll also see what I can learn so that I can maybe implement the next time I go out, because that's part of the exercise really, is to take pictures, edit them, learn from them, and go out and do it again and just iterate and iterate and iterate. So I've imported these pictures and I've just color coded them to pick the ones that I want. So whilst there's a few pictures here, some of them are kind of duplicates, so I'm going to choose which one we want. So I'm going to click on the develop panel, and that should take us into this screen here. So I'm going to go to the first image. Okay, so what I want to do is there wasn't any mist or anything like that on the day. There was nothing really to separate it, and I've got this Micro Four Thirds camera, which is great, but it doesn't always give you maybe the option of good shallow depth of field. I've got a lens on it which isn't really, it only opens up so wide, the aperture, so which limits how much separation you can get through shallow depth of field. So let's see what we can work with, because I'd still like to make this tree a little bit clearer. So I'm going to pull the exposure down a little bit. And then let's try and play with the highlights. I don't think that's right. And then maybe adding a bit of contrast to the colour. So if I pull the blacks down a bit and make the blacks a bit blacker, that's maybe made it a little bit more obvious as to what, that this tree is in the centre. I don't know, I'm not sure. But I don't know whether I like it so dark, so I'm going to push those back up a little bit. And then I'm going to also get the whites and pull those down a bit. I'm going to pull the shadows up a bit more and make the blacks a bit softer actually, rather than make them very, very dark. I'm going to pull the blacks and make them a bit softer. So you see that actually I feel that this stands out a little bit more now against the birches at the back. So when we had the blacks all the way down here, it did make it stand out, but not in a way that I liked. With the blacks going the other way, it's kind of made the colours for me stand out a little bit more. So I might just leave them like that, and then I could go and work on the colour. So I'm going to go down to a colour panel, which is the hue, saturation and luminance panel. And I can select the different colours here and try and make them a little bit more saturated or brighter, or change the hue of them slightly. So I'm going to go into the oranges, because that's what we're concentrating on here. And if we saturate the oranges a little bit more, they might stand out a bit more. So if I pull those up and make them a little bit redder, that's definitely made it a little bit more obvious that this is the subject. And I'm going to make them a bit brighter as well. And I think that's made it a little bit more prominent, which I quite like. I don't think it's perfect, but really this is, as I say, this is not a portfolio image. This is, what image did I get, and is there any way I can salvage it? Because it's kind of got some of the elements of what I like, what I was trying to get in the first place. I knew when I was taking this picture that I was going to struggle to separate that tree from the birches in the background. I knew I had the birches in the background to work with, but nothing really in between, no shallow depth of field. So I thought it was probably just going to be colours that might be the determining factor and the contrast between them. So that's kind of what I've got to play with a little bit. Next image I'm going to work on is this one. So with this one I was struggling, because what I liked about the scene that I was looking at was was these colours. I quite liked those colours, but I don't like the composition in terms of this tree, and then you've got this kind of almost looks like a Christmas tree in it, and then these logs. So I tried a number of different images when I was standing there, but I wasn't really happy with any of them. But I thought I'd just take some shots and see what I could get. And again, the other thing is that this sky is a bit distracting. I don't like the sky. There's nothing really going on in it. It just looks like white. So what I'd like to do is take that out of the equation. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to try and crop it. Now I have actually tried this in advance, and I don't really like the options. If we take all the sky out, for example, then we get that, and I don't know. I can't decide which is the subject of that, whether it's this tree, or those logs, and even if one of these is the subject, what is the purpose of the other ones as well? I don't really know. So I don't like that. I don't want to try and assemble these in any way. But what I do, I still like these colours up here in the corner. So what I could do is I could actually apply quite a heavy crop to this. So I'm going to make it portrait rather than landscape. And I'm just going to bring quite a heavy crop to this. Can't really get all of this tree out of the way. We can get most of it, and if I bring this up here, then I get these logs at the bottom, and I get some of this colour, and I get a touch of that tree there, which I don't think matters too much. So if I finish that, I don't know, there's something quite pleasant about that. I just like it. Kind of looks a bit painted. This in particular, that's really what I wanted to capture, and it's got these logs at the centre. But there's something I like about it. But it's a bit dark at the moment, so I'm going to just I'm going to bring the exposure up a bit. I'm going to make the blacks a bit blacker. Where am I? Yeah, I'm going to make the blacks a little bit blacker. I'm going to bring some of the shadows out a little bit. So we get a little bit more of this detail in the background to go with this colour. And I'm also going to try and make that a little bit clearer by just giving a touch of clarity and texture to that. Now, I think these colours could probably do with a bit of work as well, so I'm going to go back down to the actually I might just apply a tone curve. Tone curves can, add a little bit of contrast. So if I'm not brilliant with tone curves, and I normally just apply a very minor, this very, very kind of a little S curve, which you can see kind of the effect it has as the screen changes. It just gives a little bit of contrast across the whole image, which generally I quite like. I quite like the effect it has. It's subtle, but I like it. Now what I'm going to do is, there's quite a lot of yellows here, so I want those yellows to be a little bit warmer. So I'm going to go to the yellow colour, and what I want to do is make those yellows a little bit more orange, and then I want to make them a little bit more saturated. And actually I might want to make them a lot more orange, because that didn't seem to do as much as I wanted. So let's made them a bit more orange and a bit brighter. I'm going to go to the orange slider and turn the oranges a little bit redder as well, and make them a bit more saturated. Yeah, I quite like it. I don't mean, again, as I say, I'm not trying to please anybody with these. I've just got to please myself really. They're not for anybody in particular, but it's not. This is for me. This is my shooting, and what can I learn from it? So I know one thing I can learn from this is if I look at the crop of this, then you can kind of see that if I was shooting a scene like this again, I might not only take the wide picture of the tree and the logs and the bit of kind of like the holly tree there, I might also try and get some of the details. If it was that I was interested all along, why didn't I just zoom in to get that? Now, it might have been because of the limitations of the zoom lens, but I had a zoom lens, I probably had enough to try and get that. But so this is quite a heavy crop, but I still think it works. Okay, so this image is another example of, we've got this tree in the foreground, which found it very difficult to separate that from these trees in the background. But what I liked about this was there was a man walking his dog, and that's what I thought might make this scene a little bit more interesting. So you've got quite dramatic tree here. I like all these really windy branches. I'm not massively keen on this bit of sky here, so we'll see what we can do about that. So first of all, I'm going to have a look at the crop. So if I wanted to take that sky away, then I'd have to crop it all the way in here, which kind of works. But then you've got these people walking. They've already walked through the image. They're walking out of it and into this tree, and I've lost a lot of that tree as well, which it's not the end of the world, but I quite liked having more of that tree in it to kind of, especially to create that frame for this, this man and his dog. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change to a square crop, and then see what we can do, because then that might keep us. So that as a square crop, I can bring the side in a little bit, so as we've still got this tree in the foreground. These guys are kind of he's round about centre of the image, as is the dog, and you've still got a lot of this tree as well, and I quite like that. So let's try and work with that and see how we go. So let's finish that crop. Now it's like that. Do I still like it, or is he too big in there? Oh, I think that's all right. Let's go with that. So I'm going to have a little bit of. I'm going to up the exposure a little bit, and draw out the shadows. I really like this grass at the bottom as well, and I think adding a little bit of clarity might make that a little bit clearer. Who'd have thought adding clarity makes things clearer? So let's see if we can go down to the colour area again and see if we can do anything about the colours on this tree to make it a little bit stronger. So let's move, slide this. So that's made those reds a bit redder. Reducing the blacks down, bringing the blacks down does make it stand out a little bit more, and it makes it a bit moodier, because this, it makes the shadows of this man with some kind of hat, or you could have a hood on or something like that. It just makes it a little bit more, I don't know, mysterious. I think I kind of want this to be, the eye to be drawn in a little bit. So if we had a bit of a vignette, and feather it so that it's not quite as hard edged, then that might work. I think that'll do. And quite like doing a square crop every now and then, because you don't always get those, and I think this probably works quite well as a square crop. This image is cluttered in some way. You've got this tree, you've got this tree, and you've got this person, but I still think it's still an interesting picture to look at. I quite like that dog as well, and who doesn't love a dog in a picture? There's this image which I quite liked. I like these two trees and the way they were looking, and this had a little patch of colour in the background, as well as these silver birch. Again, there's a bit of sky behind there. I think that just is too much. I want to probably take that away and maybe just concentrate on trying to make these lovely greens look a bit nicer, and maybe take away some of this across the bottom. Needs some of it, but not all of it, I think. So let's try that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to crop this in there. I don't want to take away all this colour, you see. So I just want to, it's like if I pull those in like that, then I get rid of all of that across the top. And then if I just pull the corners in as well at the bottom, then I lose some of this area at the bottom of the frame as well. Because I really want this to be about these trees with kind of the supporting characters of this colour and these birches as well. It's kind of, you know, what's happened with these trees. Something's happened. Who knows what? But, you know, there's a whole world happening on them now with moss and kind of the ferns growing in there, and there's some lovely colours and stuff as well. So I think that is quite a pleasing image, but I think it's too dark at the moment. What I need to do is take the exposure up a little bit and see what happens. So if I take the exposure up, and I also want to bring the shadows out a little bit. So bring the shadows out, really start to show you a bit more of the details of this moss, this lovely moss, and you also get a bit more of the ferns and the branches and stuff, so which is quite nice. To add to that is a bit of clarity and a bit of texture, and I'll make the blacks a little bit blacker to kind of add a bit of contrast. In certain areas like here, I think the highlights are probably a bit high, so I'm just going to take the highlight slider a little down a touch to kind of take that glare off. Yeah, I don't mind that. I quite like it. It's got stuff going on in there, quite a lot going on in there, but it's woodland, isn't it? So if I want minimalism, I probably wouldn't take that picture. Right, let's have a look. Now, I'm going to go back to this picture now. This is that image. This is the same tree which was in this picture, but I just took it in isolation to see if I could isolate it, which I don't know whether I could. So I'm just going to try and isolate it, but what I'm going to do for that is use the local adjustment brush to kind of take down, to try and create a separation which isn't there. So it's going to be quite manufactured, and I don't know if it will work. So let's try it. So first of all, I'm going to bring up the exposure a bit, and I'm going to bring the blacks down. So what I'm trying to concentrate on now is this tree, and not worry so much about what's going on around it. I know that's really cluttered at the moment, but if I can, I'm going to add a little bit of a curve to add a bit of contrast as well. And then I'm just going to do the same kind of thing that I wanted to do with the other image, which was to you know, kind of make these colours a little bit more prominent. So I don't mind that tree, that's all right. Again, this is not an award-winning photo, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the local adjustment brush. So what the local adjustment brush is you can see on the screen there is this, my mouse pointer is now this quite nice big brush, and what I'm going to do is use that brush to, I'm going to get the clarity, I'm going to take that right the way down, and the texture as well. And that means that whatever I paint over with this brush on the screen, it should reduce, it'll apply whatever I've chosen here in terms of the brush settings. So I'm also going to add some remove some dehaze, which might make it a bit hazier. And I'm just taking the exposure down a little bit on it, not too much because we're doing quite a lot to it already, but we'll see what happens. We can always change it if we're not happy. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and I'm going to click on the show selected mask overlay. So whatever I paint, it will show it in red, and it will show how strong I've painted it as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over here and just paint roughly around the tree. Now, I've gone a little bit over the base of the tree there, which is not great, but this is quite rough. So I'm just going to go around here, maybe do it there. There's a bit of feathering involved here, so it doesn't have to be too precise, but what the aim is to take some of the, is to add softness to all of the image, which I don't want to be in sharp focus, I guess. So now if we take that mask overlay off, you'll see that it's a bit of a stylized image now, because like this is all looking a bit wispy and stuff, but it's made this tree stand out a bit more. And then, so if I click on done and I just boost the exposure a little bit, this tree's standing out a little bit more now, which looks all right, I think. I'm going to add a bit of clarity and a bit of texture to the whole image. And I'm going to take these blacks down even further. And now this tree is standing there a little bit more separated from what was around it. So I think I've gone overboard on the clarity a bit, so I'm going to bring that down. So yeah, that looks all right. Again, not award winning, but this is more of a demonstration to show what you're capable of doing with Lightroom. There's tools at your disposal, which depends, you know, some people are more comfortable going over the top than others, but you know, whatever you do is up to you a little bit. For me, an image doesn't always have to look like you see it with your eyes. So, for like, you know, when I look at this tree in the on the common, it doesn't look like that, but that's fine because that's where I wanted the image to look, maybe. And when I took it, I thought, I know what I might be able to do to try and separate that out, whilst we don't have perfect weather conditions. Because the fact is, you don't have perfect weather conditions. You don't always have the situations that you want when you go out to take the pictures that you're trying to get. Sometimes using software can help, and it can be a bit contentious sometimes, but it's up to the individual, and I'm all right with that. If you just want it to use Lightroom to kind of just apply crops and to you know, just change the colours a little bit, or you know, correct the exposure, make it a bit straighter, things like that, that's as good as any reason to use it. So there you go. So they're my 3 images that I chose to edit, and I think as a collection it looks all right. What I'll probably do is put it on my website at some point. You can have a look at them in more detail. So anyway, I might do some more of these because if nothing else, it helps me to talk through what I'm trying to do sometimes, even if it's just to a camera, even if no one's watching it. So, but it's good to do sometimes. So thank you very much. Hope it helped.